and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another Taiwanese review inspired in the world of Hong Kong cinema. We have is Dragging In by King Hu, legendary director, which is one of the staple ones for the 60s during that time, and redefined and kind of led the way for those kind of wuxia films that we love so much from the Shaw Brothers library, and many films that he's done personally in that space, in that genre. And this is a director which I've not really dived into. I've known about him for quite some time. I own a few of his films, from A Touch of Zen on the EUREKA edition, and of course Come Drink With Me, which is part of Shaw Brothers, part of the Hong Kong collaboration. I did know about him from the Swords of the Swordsman, which the director talked about in the extras, and sharing some of the same cast during the time, with quite an extensive amount of movies that are slowly getting more and more releases down the line. So a load of them already got on Blu-ray release already. Some have 4K editions, and there's still quite a few that are still yet to come. I think Painting Skin is another one coming out from Criterion, coming out later in the year, so that's going to be quite a big one. Another has Sammo Hung and more of a traditional Hong Kong cast. So big legendary status as a director and writer, very kind of hot in the space in terms of the wuxia as mentioned, and produced some of the best films in that field, not just within wuxia, but just as in spiritual films, kind of artistic based movies, films about the old kind of dynasty and kind of certain kind of writings, adaptations. So a very interesting kind of director, which I'm very excited to kind of dive into as much as I can down the line. And very similar to what I've done with Flying Guillotine, I'm going to explore a series of films based on the first Inception, which is the Dragging In, going forward to the new Dragging In, which came much later on. There's also Goodbye Dragging In, and capping it off with The Flying Swords of the Dragon Gate, done by Troy Hawk, with teaming up after so long with Jet Li, which I've heard mixed things from that film. I don't know if it's any good. I know it's a 3D film, but I've always heard about it. I've always seen the Blu-ray on the shelves, but never watched it, never knew what it was about. So good to get some context and to see the first entry going forward, to see what they do with the adaptations later on. I know this one's meant to be more of a remake, and I think so also is the Troy Hawk one is also meant to be a remake slash sequel. I'm not too sure, but I'll get into that when I actually do watch it. Dragging In was released in 1967, 1 year after doing Come Drink With Me, a part of Shaw Brothers. I'm not too sure why he left and went to Taiwan to basically kind of start producing more bigger films, and the structure of films they were making weren't kind of lining up to what he was doing. But my fucking God, Dragging in terms of quality, in terms of just technical aspects, in terms of story, action, there's so many good things. I'm not really doing a good poker face. Dragging In was unbelievable. It is fantastic. I didn't know anything about this film. I knew it was a period-based kind of movie. I knew it was more based on the dynasty, and I knew it was infamous and famous, and it was really highly regarded. It has the EUREKA edition release, which is the one here, part of the Masterclass Cinemas, which is awesome. I'll just show you here, guys. You get the booklet, and you get the Blu-ray and the DVD. This is part of a brand new restoration that was done back in 2000 and let's have a look here. 2014, a 4K restoration was presented here to basically showcase the film, and the Criterion version also has the same master, so no difference whatsoever, apart from some difference in terms of extras. So purely down to if you want both versions, or if you want those new extras from Criterion's pumped out. It's one way or the other, go for what you want. But this is a very easy access to get. But as saying, this film is absolutely incredible. I was not expecting the caliber this film had to offer going in. You're never really too sure what these kind of films are going to do. Is it going to be a nice, tasteful, quiet period movie from the 60s? Is it going to be just a nice film that you can enjoy and maybe not revisit, or maybe you might dive into it again? This film is really impressive for so many different aspects. And, you know, I might be preaching to the choir here for people who have always seen this countless times over the decades that film has been released, being this, over a 50-year-old film. Outstanding. This film it feels like a modern kind of film anyway, just in terms of its kind of sensibilities. You can feel this is the inception for a lot of other movies that have imitated, copied, or done their own take on it, especially something like Quentin Tarantino with his Kill Bill movies and his kind of Death Proof, you know, in terms of how he ended that film. The wuxia kind of genre itself definitely spawned some liberties from this film, 100%. I think Long Carly Wai, which is the awesome Hong Kong director that I love and I've done a whole series of, there's definitely some influence I think he's taken from this film, especially with Dirty Ho, in terms of the comedy, the black comedy, dark comedy, in terms of just the poker face and the kind of, not playing your hand, that type of comedy, that kind of wit, back and forth between the bad guy and the good guy, and just not revealing a straight up fight straight away, but just messing with each other, playing the game of wit and charm, and, playing one game against the other. I like that type of humor, that type of kind of smug, smartass, almost badassery in some cases. Very Dirty Ho in its kind of influence there, and also a bit of 8-diagram pole fighter, which is also in the mix. I would say it's a combination of those two. And obviously, as mentioned with Quentin Tarantino, and the reason why I have it on the shelf is the Hateful Eight. Massive, massive influence in terms of taking from Dragging In into that film. I can see it, I can respect it, and obviously paying it forward a little bit. And very similar to the Hateful Eight and Dragging In, both set within one location. Obviously, this is called the Dragging in terms of a kind of like a sort of like a hotel, I guess, bed and breakfast, out in the middle of the desert, out of nowhere, and load of characters. You keep going in and out of it, and just a bunch of people sort of working together or going against each other. And it's a masterful kind of back and forth between traditional kind of swordplay and action, which is really fun and really creative, and definitely utilizes the strengths of the time period and the trickery you can do with editing and cinematography. Definitely taking advantage of the kind of the wide-angle lens and just playing with the camera. This director is, again, this is the first film I've seen him, so maybe I'm coming into it in a very different way compared to some of his other films. How he uses the camera in this film is extraordinary. Beautiful locations, outside locations, how he pulls cameras back, how he kind of just the tracking shots, how he wants to present framing within the bad guys and the good guys, how he use action. There is some outstanding action shots in this, and I wouldn't say the choreography or the swordplay is the most amazing thing in the world. I think it's definitely of its time, but this is above and beyond what I would expect for 1960s kind of, especially when you compare it to some of the Shaw Brothers stuff, which is, again, can be quite limiting at times down to the sets, or maybe down to the time they're making these films on. This feels like he's had a lot of time just making this film, taking his time, really perfecting what he wants to do, with gorgeous kind of sunset shots with people in the background, a lot of depth. There's a lot of depth to this film. There's a lot of in focus pull. It's just incredible creativity from this director, and that's just the technical aspects, and not to mention the excellent scoring, which is very untraditional. The opening sequence is super sexy transition between the kind of initial premise of the film without casting this kind of Wu family, and then you got the scrolls, which kind of open up with the kind of the title sequence, Dragging In, and then you got the producers and the cast and crew, and then it closes. That's sexy, that's awesome, that's a great transitional shot right there. The actual storyline for Dragging In is very simple. It's set during the Dynasty era. I think it's 1457, if I remember correctly. And basically, you've got this Wong family that are on the run. A traditional high empress kind of villain character, which wants to wipe out that entire family, wipe out their heirs, and wants to kill the kids and make sure that family does no longer kind of exist further going forward. Basically, there's a chase to go against them. They send a series of kind of troops and agents that are assigned a little task force to go and find them. They know there was a kind of inception kind of meeting point that's going to happen within called the Dragging In. They incept it first. They go and take over this kind of little tavern, kind of hotel kind of place. Again, very ruthless, very nasty, killing servants, don't care about anyone's life apart from their own duties. And basically they are very traditional bad guys because they are just killing innocent people, and they've taken over. And a series of kind of events take place. Various kind of characters come in. You've got a kind of lone kind of swordsman, which is highly skillful and being paid to do something very specific. We'll find out in the film. You've got a brother and a sister, which were introduced at the start of the film. They were helping and assisting with the Wong family. They come across the kind of Dragging In, and then you've got various other characters coming back and forth, and you've got, again, a game of tension and wit with some black comedy, dark comedy kind of being presented alongside it, more of some traditional kind of fighting and skill-based, some sneaky kind of moves as well, which I think is really cool, especially some of the nighttime sequences. And you've got a plan in place, and you find out the innkeeper has also some hidden secrets and has some stake in what's going on as well. It's just a really good kind of really well-paced series of events that keeps the film fresh and keeps it interesting. And the fact that so many people go back and forth, and the action set pieces to complement it is really extraordinary, really excellent. And its storyline and kind of characters, while I think they are quite simple, it's kind of fun nature of it going back and forth, and the simplicity of it is really kind of key in this film. And you're not going to get the massive monologue of a deep dive backstory. You don't need it. You don't need that melodrama. You just need some badass characters and some likable characters to get behind for a 2-hour movie, and that's just exactly what you get in this film. Each character feels very defined and very unique in terms of their performances, in terms of what they use, in terms of weaponry, how they dress. I think all of it is really key and really kind of telling of what these characters are. But there is some nice tension in the film, and that's what I would say the second aspect of the film, and the comparisons I've made already, is what makes it so surprising and had the biggest smile on my face watching the film. This film has a great sense of comedy, whether it's subtle, whether it's obvious, whether it's a bit of dark comedy in places. Some of the sequences that that's going to kind of come to a blow eventually. But I like how these characters are going back and forth, especially the introduction with one of our main characters here, where she's kind of has an umbrella, which is great, and he kind of notices there are stains, there are blood on the table. His drink's been poisoned, or his food's been poisoned, and it's like, okay, well, my friend, go first. I insist you go first. A game of wit and back and forth, and people getting angry. And again, I like the fact that people kind of also honor their threats. If I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, and that's great. And some of the environmental kind of action, which is great, with some of the bow and arrow spears, and how he's catching them, and just really fun, very long Carly Y in terms of the approach, obviously perfected and done to a greater extent with more traditional performers doing those kind of action-based movies with the performance weaponry work and the fighting. Obviously, this one has some limitations. Whether the performers could actually do this stuff is another question, because there is some editing trickery and some continuity kind of placements. However, it's perfectly fine. Suspension of disbelief, I don't mind it. It does not bother me. It's fun, it's creative, and it makes for a really funny kind of light-hearted kind of journey for that first portion of that film, all leading into a very kick-ass kind of back and forth fight sequence between our main villain character, which has this bleached blonde hair, has this very kind of certain condition, which is kind of amusing and has a bit of a weakness to him. I like the fact that he's kind of taking on multiple people, including some of the kind of the troops that went against him. There's quite a high body count in the film. Loads of people get killed in this film. So yeah, I could talk about Dragging In for quite some time. There's loads to talk about. There's so many things that I haven't discussed on this video, but maybe I'll save that for a discussion video maybe down the line. Really, really impressive with Dragging In. Definitely lives up to the expectations and the hype that the film's already kind of known for during that time. Absolutely recommend picking this one up on the EUREKA edition, guys. Definitely want to check out. I'm very nervous about the continuations of these films, the remakes, the reimaginings. I'm very curious to see what the new Dragging Within would do with the same material. So what are your thoughts and opinions on Dragging In? Please comment down below. What is your favorite of the director's kind of filmography? Which is one you absolutely recommend, you have to see straight away when I can? Please comment down below. See you in time, guys. Amphlett Reviews, signing out.